Okay, so I'm going to be trying something that I'm not really all too antiquated which is explaining history. I'm more of like a math and science guy, but I'll still try my best. I'm going to be talking about the Great Depression, the backdrop to it all, what led to it, what happened after, and FDR's New Deals afterwards. So just to set the stage a little bit, soldiers were coming in after World War One, right? And that basically doubled the workforce. It wasn't just women, it was also men working, and that just made a lot of workers, specifically in the factory field. So factory products were just being made exponentially, right? There's a lot of them being made, and that made it really profitable to sell them because they're just like a dime a dozen. And the salaries that these workers were getting paid with would basically go right back into the company because everyone wanted to buy fridges, radios, and cars, right? All these like factory produced things. And it was really beneficial because they were super cheap at the time, right? Because so much of it was being made, the demand and supply were basically like met right here, right? It made perfect logical sense to buy a car, to buy a radio, to buy a fridge, because there was just the money for it, so there was no reason not to. At the same time, farming went way down. They were told to, really start cranking that, farmland stuff and make more and more wheat and more food because soldiers are coming back and they'd make a lot of money. So all these farmers started loaning out tractors or taking out loans to buy tractors, taking out loans to buy farmland, to buy seeds, stuff like that, so they could make a lot of wheat. And that shot up the supply. And at first, the supply and the demand met, but then they realized, I don't really need to eat this much, so it went down and down and down. And since the supply is still so high, you're going over the margin of what was needed. So the wheat was being sold at a loss, right? Or it was being sold way down to the point where farmers couldn't sustain themselves, and even to a point of where it was actually a loss. They were losing like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe not of that times money, but like pretty close to it. So now the farmers couldn't pay back their debts, and they were like really struggling. At the same time, these workers who were, making a lot of money and stuff through these factories realized, oh, my company is making a lot of money. So they started investing in the stock market, right? All these companies are going up and up and up and up in value, and if they're going to keep on going up, why shouldn't I buy some stocks into this company? Because my money is just going to like basically double, right? So it got to the point where people were actually taking out loans to buy stocks because they thought, oh, it's just going to keep on going up and up and up and up and up. Why not just buy a stock, wait a little bit, cash out, and then give the stockbroker or the person I'm loaning money from the original money, and make some sweet bag along with it. So people were taking out loans to buy factory products or to buy stocks of factory companies, and that would really like inflate the value of these companies. It's just everyone's buying them because they were too big to fail, right? There was no way that anything could have went wrong. But something eventually did end up going wrong. Basically, there was this whole new idea of credit and debt where you could buy something on a loan and you would just be expected to pay it back, a couple, maybe like a year from now, a couple years if it was something really big, but just like over a general period of time. So a bunch of people thought, oh, why don't I just buy whatever I want, right? And then just spend as little money as I need possible, right? The minimum payment, to just afford all these products, okay? This was like the Klarna before Klarna. Everyone was just like refinancing like a world's version of a Costco hot dog, right? Everything was being refinanced, everything was being done on loan, because why not? Why wait for my paycheck when I can get it now, especially when I'm making so much money from my work, from stocks, stuff like that. So people were just loaning everything out. But because everyone was paying the minimum payments on these products, the companies realized, oh, I have no money. I'll have maybe money a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, but at this current moment, I have no money, and the debt collector's on my door right now. So I need to call in my loans. So they call in the loans of the people who are buying all these stuff on credit, and they're like, hey, time to pay up. And they're like, what the heck? Why would I pay up? I don't owe you anything until like from a year from now. So, and even if I did have money, I can't pay you back, or even or I that's even if I had money. I don't have money. I can't pay you back. So the companies were screwed. They had no money, and they only had a small prospect of money over a long period of time. And this basically screwed over the companies. So the companies were actually secretly losing value, and they were all about to go bankrupt. Now, there were some very wealthy people, out in New York, out in Boston, out in like California, like this general area, Louisiana, where all these like rich people are, and they were getting, telegrams in the mail, or just in general, like word on the street was, pull out your money right now, right? Things are about to go kaput, okay? Everything's about to drop down because all these companies are going defunct because they're not getting the money that they need. So, last minute, or more like all of a sudden, a bunch of rich people take out all their stocks from the stock market all at once. So they only lose like a menial amount. Like to them, maybe like $1 million, which to us is a lot, but to them is like, just behind their couch cushions or whatever. And they were fine. But because they had such big stock portfolios, once they sold their stocks, the stock market just crashed. Everything went down, and no one had any money at all, especially or specifically if you were like an everyday worker, or you didn't get the memo that, hey, take out your stocks right now, right? Insider trading wasn't illegal at the time. It was just like a thing that people did. So people were screwed. They had their life savings, or like hundreds of dollars in the stock market, sometimes even on loan, and they couldn't pay anything back. And it got to the point where some people were like trying to get their money out of the banks, right? Or like get a loan to like basically survive. And then people were they're like, oh, I need to get my money out of the bank. So people were calling up banks, like standing in lines to get their money back from the banks. And they would realize that once they got up to the line, sorry, the vault's empty. There's nothing left. We're bankrupt. So at this time, when a company went bankrupt, or when a bank went bankrupt, there was no money. You were screwed, okay? Because they're not getting that money back from loans. No one's going to be paying back a bankrupt company. They're not getting that money back. You lost your money. Should have gotten in line sooner. So people were losing everything. There was like suicide happening at the time, where people were like, I have nothing to live for, and life is going to suck, especially because I have no money. The people who did decide to keep on living didn't have the money to pay back like rent. So a bunch of people got kicked out of their houses, and they had to live in these things called Hoovervilles, which are like shanty towns, or like homeless encampments almost on the street, right? So you grab like some plywood, a metal like sheet over your head for the rain, and that would be your house for the next couple of years, right? There's stories of people eating the whole apple to conserve on food. And even though like farm prices were low, or like food products were low in like price, that didn't matter because you had no money to begin with, right? Since all these factory companies are going defunct, you're going way down in employment, right? The employment rates, the unemployment rate went up to 25%. So 25%, or a quarter of the country, was unemployed. And that was not good for anyone, but especially like elderly people, women who didn't have as many opportunities as men, and children who couldn't work at all, really. So basically everyone was screwed. People started like migrating to other parts of the country to look for work, and they would find, there's some migrants here, and they would have to fight with the migrants for these jobs, right? Because either way, one of them was going to get the job, and it was basically better me than him gets the job, so I get to live, and he likely does not, or he has to go back to his home country or whatever. And this was very, very bad. The president at the time, President Hoover, wasn't doing much to help, and if anything, he was kind of hindering the whole scenario or the event. He was putting tariffs on things, which made it hard for people to buy things as it was or sell things, and that basically put like a stopper on how much money the country had, right? Nothing was coming in and nothing was coming out, really. Which was really bad, because now you have all this money, some of it just completely gone, and nothing to really do with it, and there was no jobs, no nothing. Everyone was really, really, really screwed. And like I said, Hoover didn't do anything. That's why Hoovervilles are called what they are, because President Hoover did nothing. Thankfully, in comes FDR with his New Deal, which focused on three main things, which was relief, recovery, and reform. So the relief part was, well, everyone's screwed. Let me give some money so these people are less screwed. Second thing was recovery of the economy, right? You're trying to bring it back to its former glory, to before everything was screwed up. And then the last one was reform. So banks weren't giving people their money. If they went under, you lost your money permanently. And that's not good. People aren't going to trust banks. They're going to be putting their money under their couch cushions or in their mattress. Why would I trust a bank if they're not even going to give me my money at the end of the day? So FDR had to instill trust back into banks and into bankers. So he did a thing, for example, where he promised that up to $250,000, or at least today, $250,000 is insured by the U.S. government. So if a bank goes under and they can't give you your money back, we'll give you $250,000 or up to $250,000 of your money back, so you don't have to worry about that. Which may have screwed over the wealthy people, but once you have $250,000, I think you're okay. He gave $500 million to bring back certain banks. It wasn't just like big time banks that were going under, it was the small time banks too, like state, local banks. And he was just bringing those back to get people their like money back, or like chances of getting their money back, and to once again like reinstill trust in the whole banking system. He created a bunch of public work jobs. Since factory companies were like gone, there was nothing here. People's the employment rate went down, so he had to bring it back up somehow. So if he couldn't make his own company, why wouldn't he maybe do something in public service? All these people were already working with their hands one way or another, so why don't we just give these people a hammer and they're going to start building houses? Especially since everyone's living in these like shanty towns, these Hoovervilles, why not build up some public housing to give to people who can't afford a house, right? So like women, the elderly, etc. Banks and stock markets were regulated, right? You couldn't just go around and do insider trading anymore. That's actually not hot anymore. You can't do that. And he provided relief and to farmers and workers. He had to cut a deal with farmers to basically lower the production of their crop, right? So he said like, hey, maybe hanker it down a little to meet that like whole supply and demand thing, right? Because you're doing supply and demand, and if your supply is way up, you're going to be selling at a loss. So instead, it makes sense to bring supply down to meet demand. So then you'll have like a stagnant price for a product. There was a similar thing, I'm not too sure if it's still happening now, with the cheese bank. Basically, if farmers were creating a surplus of milk that year and no one was buying milk, then the government would actually buy that milk to keep milk at the same price, turn it into cheese, and if there was ever a shortage of dairy, then the government would sell the cheese, right, to keep the price of dairy products stagnant, right? You don't want it to go up or down is the idea. What the government did, and that's been its strategy, right? You want to keep everything generally to what it is, where it's the most beneficial for the person selling it and the person buying it, okay? No one wants to buy a $500 cheeseburger, but McDonald's does want to sell a $500 cheeseburger. So you have to meet somewhere in the middle where, okay, maybe $1 is acceptable, or like, back in the day, maybe like 75 cents. Before FDR did his whole New Deal thing, there was long bread lines in soup kitchens, right? And at the same time, there was this thing called the Dust Bowl. Basically, the biomes of the Great Plains were not built for farming, right? They were built for this long grass that had these like thick roots that would keep the dirt together. And once you rip out all this grass, you're just going to be creating a lot of dust. And you'd have these dust tornadoes basically destroying like agriculture everywhere, really screwing over the whole farming companies or the farming farms more than they were being screwed over in general. So you'd lose a few farms because of that, which, inadvertently did lower the supply, but not in the nicest, kindest way. Before the Great Depression in general, banks were encouraging risky loans. So it's like, oh yeah, sure, you'll get your money back. You just give me money now, and then you put in the stock market, and you give me money back eventually, right? And everything will be hunky-dory in glory. I'll make money, you'll make money. Everyone's one happy family. Yeah, people were buying like stocks or like loans to buy stocks at like 10% down, which is for people who don't buy loans, really crazy. You wouldn't expect that kind of stuff. Insider traders sold their stocks on the 24th, and everyone after that was basically screwed around the 29th. That's when people got fucked a little bit there. That is about everything for the Great Depression. That's everything that you need to know. Good luck on your tests, quizzes, essays, or whatever you have for this general time frame. And yeah, see ya.